and CEO of the Richard Nixon Foundation. It's always a pleasure to be with you here in Yorba Linda. I want to begin, as we normally do, by thanking our President's Council members and our Associates Club members. There's a few of them here for your support this evening, because it is your support that makes programs like this possible, so thank you. Now on to this evening's distinguished speaker. In 1971, President Nixon signed the National Cancer Act, which allocated more than $1 billion in research between 1971 and 74 as grants to better understand the underlying mechanisms of cancer. This was without a doubt one of the most impactful and consequential pieces of domestic legislation in the second half of the 20th century. Now, 52 years later, cancer is much better understood, but we still have a long way to go and a lot to learn. Though we all have someone who we know who has experienced cancer, cancer remains an exciting field of study, precisely because it is so widespread, and we still have so much more to learn. And one of the scientists who is reinventing and expanding what we know about cancer is Dr. William Lee. Dr. Lee is best known for his role as president and medical director of the Angiogenesis Foundation. His work has led to more than 40 FDA-approved therapeutics and devices for cancer, cardiovascular disease, wound healing, and vision loss. Dr. Lee examines food as medicine through molecular nutrition, which applies biology and biotechnology to understand not only the components of food, but how the body responds to what it is fed. This is a pioneering approach, which has led to a deeper understanding of the cellular mechanisms responsible for the health benefits of food, and is particularly helpful with disease prevention and faster recovery. And you'll note that we have hot tea in the back, because that is one of the recommendations that Dr. Lee is a proponent of. He is a New York Times best-selling author and a participant in the Nixon National Cancer Conference for its inaugural year and last year as well. And he's the author of Eat to Beat Your Diet, which is a terrific book, and you can all pick it up in the Nixon Library gift shop on your way out. And it's my pleasure now to welcome Dr. Lee back to the Nixon Library this evening.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Jim Byron and the President Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Birthplace, and to you all for joining me this evening. I am very excited to share with you some new information about food, health, metabolism, and your diet. And this is something that unites all of us, regardless of where we came from, because food is something that unites people, but also brings out our humanity. And so that's going to be a theme I'm going to try to kind of carry on today. And I'm going to talk about things that are coming out of my book, but more broadly, sort of my research in general, and I know some of the questions that people have in struggling with food and their diet and their health. And so I thought I would actually share with you some of the latest science about metabolism, because the title of my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, is a bit of a trick title. It's not a diet book. It's an anti-diet book. And it's anti-diet because it tells, the new science of the metabolism tells us we don't need to go on a diet in order to be able to achieve health, regardless of your body size. And that's really an important breakthrough for us to understand, both from a medical perspective, a scientific perspective, and I think from a community perspective as well. You all know that there is a lot of fanfare right now about prescription weight loss drugs. Fad diets are still out there, and it's a big business to find ways to help people lose weight. There's nothing wrong with losing weight. It's that it's become an obsession that has taken us further and further away from our humanity. So what I want to show you is some of the work that's gone back in to help us regain our humanity in the community as it relates to metabolism. So I actually put a bunch of slides up because I think this will help frame things. All of us think we know something about metabolism, even though if you look on Google under Wikipedia, metabolism has a fairly complicated definition. But the things that we assume about metabolism are We're either born with a fast or slow metabolism, and we can see that in people who are rail thin and who never seem to have to worry about what they have to eat, versus someone else, maybe you, that's always struggled a little bit with food and your weight. We also believe that kids, teenagers, have a soaring metabolism. They're eating 2 or 3 dinners, they're bouncing off the walls, and so they must have a pretty high metabolism as they're growing up. We also think, and I'm just looking around today and think most of us probably fit in this category of concern, middle age. As you reach your 40s or 50s or 60s, our metabolism slows down. That's the assumption. And as our metabolism slows, our shape starts to change, and we begin to struggle with how to actually maintain the younger form, who we used to be, and that's also due to our metabolism. And then finally, the assumption always is that a slow metabolism causes you to gain body fat and gain weight. So you kind of curse the metabolism as the explanation for why you struggle with weight. Man, if I only had a better metabolism, right? Okay, well, it turns out all of these assumptions, which I also used to believe, all of them are wrong. Not a single one of these things is correct. And that's really what I'm actually going to tell you about. What have we discovered about our metabolism that completely upends how we think we need to interact with our food? And by the way, there's good news. So I'm going to wind up with things that you can actually do. Now, everything that we thought we knew about metabolism was overturned just 2 years ago in 2021. This paper, and I'm just showing you the paper because I know most of you are not scientists, but this is the kind of work that I look at. This paper emerged in December of 2021, and it was written by you can see the first author, Herman Ponzer. He's at Duke University. He worked with 90 other researchers. This is a big study, and tried to ask the question, what is human metabolism really like over the course of our lifespan, from the time we're born until our final days? And remarkably, we didn't know. Nobody really knew what human metabolism looked like over the course of an entire life. So here's what he did. He actually studied babies, 8-day-old babies, and studied people who were 90 years old, and he studied everyone in between. All right, so this is the largest study ever undertaken in modern times of human metabolism over the course of the entire human lifespan. And they studied them remarkably with a glass of water. Now, water is H2O, right? You've all heard of water. Hydrogen is H, oxygen is the O. And what they did, these researchers, they tweaked the atoms so that the hydrogen was tweaked and the oxygen was tweaked, so they could measure when you drank that glass of water in your breath, how did your metabolism change the hydrogen and the oxygen. They could measure it in a blood test, and they could also measure it in a urine sample. So these are 3 very easy ways to study it. And, think about how you would study all this in a baby, right? So an 8-day-old baby. This is how they did it. Seems simple, but when they actually did the research, what happened is that everyone's metabolism was all over the map, just like you might expect. However, this being, the modern age of computational power, they developed an algorithm that was able to subtract out the effect on every one of these 6,000 people, the effect on the metabolism of excess body fat. So for example, if you happen to be a subject in this study, they would know how tall you are, how much you weigh, and they would be able to actually correct that using this algorithm to say, what would so-and-so's metabolism be if we were to remove the impact of the extra body fat? So this is what they actually found when they did that. Human metabolism over the course of a lifetime happens in 4 stages. By you removing the effect of extra body fat, it was like pulling the cloak off of the statue of David. So for the first time, we could see how Mother Nature actually formed metabolism. This, by the way, you're looking at this, I can tell you that most medical doctors have not seen this graph yet. This is how new this discovery is. It was published in the journal Science, which is all about new discoveries about about mankind and the world around us. And to think that we are all hardwired. This is our operating system. If we were laptops and you went out to buy a laptop in your computer store, I went to buy one in my computer store, plugged it in our respective homes, booted it up, our operating system in a laptop would operate exactly the same way, your laptop and my laptop. Similarly, our metabolism is hardwired to be our operating system out of the box. Out of the womb, it operates exactly the same way. And by the way, that makes a lot of sense. Our kidneys come out of the womb working the same way, yours and mine. Our brains and our hearts all pump. Our brain thinks, our nerves work the same way, our joints work the same way. So why would we think that our metabolism isn't hardwired exactly the same way? Well, we didn't have the proof until 2 years ago. So what you're seeing is something that most doctors haven't actually appreciated yet. The textbook on human metabolism is now being ripped up and thrown out, and the new one hasn't even been written yet, but this is actually what it's going to look like. All right? Now, a couple of things I want to point out about these 4 phases of metabolism. First of all, everyone's born with the same metabolism. Okay? Out of the box, we're all pretty much the same. And the first year of life, phase 1, our metabolism goes to 50% higher, soars, compared to what it's going to be later on when we're an adult. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is you know how important it is how we expose our children, our babies, to things in the environment. Well, there are things called phthalates that are found in plastics. It's found in pacifiers, found in breastfeeding bottles, found in toys that actually are called obesogens, and they actually derail our metabolism and cause us to gain extra body fat. Not something we want to do. So now that we know this, I think we can now take a hard, critical look at what the materials are that we expose our children to. All right? Second phase is during teenage years, adolescence, right? This is when the kids are bouncing off the wall, eating 2 or 3 dinners. Actually, metabolism is going down, 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 down to adult levels, okay? But the mic drop, really, discovery is that in phase 3, 20 to 60, our metabolism is hardwired to be rock stable. It does not change when you're 40 or 50 or 60. It doesn't actually, it's not hardwired to change. Our metabolism is designed to be very stable in our adult lives. And that makes sense too, all right? So what actually happens during middle age? Why do we actually have shape changes and gain weight and have difficulty? Well, something happens, and that something is called life. We get distracted. We don't sleep as well. We're stressed out. We're worried about the kids. We're worried about our homes. We're worried about our relationships. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about the war. We're worried about, there's so many things that go on that distract us. And with stress, actually stress changes the way our body works and makes it easier to gain body fat. Stress makes it more difficult to sleep well. When you don't sleep well, the judgment that you have in making good food choices is more difficult, and we're more vulnerable to marketing and choosing that food that seems so crunchy and delicious and snacky and easy that's just in front of us. And we also have hormonal changes as well. Both men and women, hormones change as we get older, and as hormones change, our brain changes as well. Our decision-making also alters a little bit. So we're not as clear-minded as we were when we were younger. And then, the other thing that occurs is that when we're stressed and tired, we also don't exercise and not as physically active as we used to be. And now, of course, in today's world, most of us are sitting down in front of a computer screen a lot, too much. And so all these things conspire as we reach our middle age. But the good news is that even though our behavior makes it easier for us to actually gain body fat, it turns out our metabolism is hardwired to be rock stable. So the good news about this is that actually if we fight our extra body fat, remember I told you, this study removed the effect of extra body fat. If we're able to remove it ourselves, the power of allowing our own metabolism to rise to the surface lies within us and our decision making. So it's no longer, the reality isn't that, oh man, there's nothing I can do. Yes, we can actually allow our metabolism to rise to what it wants to be, okay? That's really important. Now, age 60 and above, your metabolism does descend a little bit, but only about 17%. By the time you're 90, your metabolism is about 17% of what it was when you were 60. But remember, 60 and 20 are rock solid. So in fact, 60 can be the new 20 if you allow your metabolism to do its thing. This is a big insight. This is something we didn't realize until just about 2 years ago, how much power we have to be able to restore and maintain our metabolism, all right? Okay, so this is the reveal that I'm giving you tonight. We're all born with the same metabolism. We go through 4 phases, and it's stable. It doesn't automatically change during middle age. And extra body fat is something that we need to be careful about, because it actually, when you have extra body fat, it suppresses your metabolism, not the other way around. Now, this image here is actually a colored CT scan that we are able to do. So it's like a big deli slice from a picture perspective of the body. Excess body fat suppresses your metabolism, so fighting extra body fat actually improves your metabolism, allows it to regain where it wants to be. This is the reason to fight body fat, is to allow your own metabolism to have more energy, better circulation, clarity of mind. You'll feel better in almost every single aspect of your life if you get rid of that, trim away that extra body fat. So body fat's not bad. Body fat's actually really good until you have too much of it. Now, in fact, normal levels of body fat are absolutely vital for our health. We absolutely need it, okay? So I just told you extra body fat will suppress your metabolism, but I don't want you to think that we should be getting rid of all of our fat, all right? Now, with this obsession with prescription weight loss drugs, it seems like, well, man, if we can lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, how good would that be? I want to actually leave you tonight, if there's one message I can leave you with, is that fat is really good until it's bad. We need healthy body fat for lots of reasons, and here I'm going to show you why. Now, before I show you the details, I want to say, look, we all encounter excess fat. This is the dad bod, right? This is what you see when you step out of the shower in the morning and you're drying yourself, and out of the corner of your eye, you see a lump or a bump that, like, you know what? I'm not in good shape anymore, I need to work out. And you step on the scale, the number comes up, isn't the one that you had hoped for, and you're disappointed. And so our relationship with body fat is really very negative as adults, right? And you go to the grocery store, go to the butcher section, and you see this beautiful steak, and with a big rind of fat around it, and your reaction is, ugh, I hope nobody eats that. Right? So we have this really kind of a dysmorphic relationship with the word fat. The idea of fat is very negative. But I want to tell you, fat is beautiful, because when we see a baby, what makes us smile is a big chubby baby, big chubby tummy, big chubby cheeks, arms and legs that look like those balloons that a clown makes at a carnival or circus, you know, the little poodles that they twist, right? So fat can't be bad. And I want to actually take you to understand a little bit about the new science of metabolism teaches us what fat actually does. Our fat helps our metabolism be very healthy. Fat helps control our metabolism, all right, in a good way. Now, let me show you what actually happens. So we got to rethink body fat, and it's good. All right, what you're seeing, these little red balls, actually is what, it's a colorized picture, but it actually is what body fat looks like. They're body fat broken down into the individual cells, or the cells are called adipocytes, and they're kind of like bubble wrap, I would say. And in fact, when the bubble wrap forms, fat forms when you're still in the womb. About a couple months into pregnancy, your blood vessels are formed, and this bubble wrap of fat cells wraps around every blood vessel. Now, that's a curious thing, right? It's not forming in the belly, it's not forming around the cheeks yet. It forms around blood vessels, and there's a reason why. Number one, fat is a fuel tank. So when we eat food, our metabolism basically takes the energy from that food and it stores it. You know where it stores it? In the fuel tank. Food is the source of our fuel. The fuel is stored by our metabolism into a fuel tank, and fat cells, our fat is the fuel tank, just like the fuel tank in your car, all right? So that's why it's near the blood vessels, because that's where the energy is going to be from food that you eat getting absorbed into your stomach, from your stomach into your bloodstream. Your metabolism puts it right away, tucks it right into the fuel tank, which is body fat. Now, fat is also padding, obviously. If we had no body fat and you slipped on the rug, you fell on the floor, some of your organs might burst open. So good thing we have some padding, all right? Fat is also an endocrine organ. You know what an endocrine organ is? It's an organ that secretes hormones. Thyroid, adrenal gland, pituitary, ovaries, testicles. Sound familiar? Those are endocrine organs. Fat is an actual organ in your body as well. All right, so when it does its job properly, it's actually really important. And then fat is a space heater, and I'm going to tell you at the very end of this talk how useful that space heater function of fat actually is. So remember, fuel, food is our fuel, stored in a fuel tank. The endocrine organ of fat creates hormones. These hormones, and we're not going to go into all the details of what these hormones do, suffice it to say that they allow our body to use the fuel efficiently. Not inefficiently, efficiently. When we have the right amount of healthy fat, it allows us to draw energy from our food into our body. And when we are eating, it's all about storing fuel. When we are not eating, like when we're sleeping, our metabolism switches gears and it begins to burn down the fuel in the fuel tank. Think about when you're at a gas station with a car, right? You turn off the engine when you're filling up your gas tank. Well, you don't want to be burning the fuel while you're actually filling it up, all right? So when we're eating, we're focused on filling up the tank. And when we're not eating, we're done eating, that's when our body can switch gears, our metabolism switch gears. Say, let's go burn the fuel now. That's like in the car. We start the car, we drive off, and we're burning fuel. That's how I'd like to actually help you understand this complex thing called metabolism. It's like a car with fuel. Now, these hormones actually control that. Now, the space heater function has something called brown fat. Fat has two colors. I'm going to tell you how cool that is in a second. But let's talk about the fuel in the fuel tank concept for a second. It's really, really important. By the way, this function of fat happens in the fittest of all people. This is a series of Olympic athletes. These are young people at the top of their game, at the top of their physical fitness, and look at their body types. It doesn't matter if they're big body, big boned, or thin, or skinny. They all have body fat, and that fat, by the way, is performing and helping them stay healthy and fit. And a lot of people don't think about this, but Olympians, champions, gold medalists come in all shapes and sizes. Very important for us to appreciate. By the way, there's 17 classes in weight classes in boxing, like from super featherweight to heavyweight, and there is a world champion in every weight class. I want you to remember that because too often we associate a number, okay, or a shape with something negative. I just want you to remember, body shape doesn't actually equate to fitness, nor does the number on your scale. There's a champion at all these different levels. Now, we're talking about the fuel tank still. So when you get in a car, you don't think about the fact that your car has to take gasoline and move it from the tank all the way through to the engine, okay, and then burn that gas in order to drive. You just get in the car and go about your way. And just like that in our body, we don't think about our metabolism. We get up in the morning, we get dressed, we go off and do our thing, all right? But we're not thinking about that the fuel. But in a car, you do pay attention to the fuel by looking at the fuel gauge. When the fuel gauge runs low, what do? You pull over to the gas station, pull out the nozzle, put it in the tank, fill it up, it goes click, and then you're done, and then you take the nozzle off and you drive off. Well, our body doesn't have a fuel gauge that we can see, but in our organs and in our brain, we do have sensors that tell us when our fuel is low. And you know what we do when we actually, when our fuel is low in our body? We pull over to the filling station of our dinner table, or the refrigerator, or the pantry, okay, or the restaurant in order to fill up, right? So in the car, we do this, all right? But actually, in the body, we sit down and have a meal. So I imagine most of you have had dinner, probably all had lunch, and that's because your body actually told you you're running low on fuel, time to fill up. Don't be afraid of food. It is actually part of just filling up our tank like we do with our car. By the way, I'm telling you this car analogy because it's very important. The quality of the fuel you put in your car matters, all right? So you've probably heard this and probably practiced this. Putting the best quality fuel in your gas, you load for gas, helps your car last longer and run better. Sure, go ahead and put some cheap gas in your car once in a while. It's not going to hurt it. You're not going to notice it. But do it day in, day out, week in, week out, month after month, year after year. Guarantee you that your car, if all you do is put crappy fuel into it, is not going to run as long or as well as somebody who takes care to put quality fuel in there. Now, why does that matter to food? Because the quality of our food matters. How we grow our food, where we get our food, the quality of our food. And we know that whole foods are the best quality, and we know that ultra-processed foods that come in a box and the factory is made in a different way might be cheap, but that's kind of like cheap gas, not always the highest quality fuel, all right? Just remember that, like it'll help you think about, put that connection together of metabolism and food and quality. All right, now we've got to talk about something important, right? Connect this back to fat. So you know what you do when you fill up your car with gas, the tank fills up, you can't see it because the gas tank of a car is actually tucked inside the external chassis. But fat cells, when we actually fill up the energy, the fuel in our fat cells, they're like bubbles. They can actually get bigger. And so when you eat, your metabolism takes all the energy you need to have your heart beat and your eyes blink and be able to chew. Anything extra, by the way, gets stuffed into fat cells. Remember, fuel tank, normal. But if you overeat, you're going to blow up your fat cell bigger and bigger. You know, a fat cell can get 300% larger just by loading up with fuel. Think about that, all right? That's like a balloon that blew 300 times that in size. A normal fat cell you can't see under the microscope, except under a microscope. But if you really overeat and load up your fat 300% its size, you'll be able to see it with the naked eye. Now imagine you keep on overeating. You're going to fill up more fuel. The balloon of your fat gets bigger. Oh, you're still overeating? Well, let's fill up another one. Still overeating? Let's fill up another one. Oh, now we're out of fat cells. We need more fuel tanks. Our body will take stem cells and make brand new fat cells and fill them up too, and again, and again. And you can imagine if we overeat over time, we'll build up more and more body fat. That is what happens when we actually get extra body fat that suppresses our metabolism. So the easiest thing you can do to protect yourself is not to overeat. But yet we need this fuel just to get around to do everything from laundry to going to work. So don't fear your food, but think about it as you're filling up your tank. You don't want to overload your tank. By the way, what happens at the gas station, if you didn't have that click at the end, the fuel would come out. It would fill up, it would leak out the side, run down the side of the car, around the tires, run around your shoes, and now you'd be standing in a toxic, dangerous, flammable mess, right? So this is why we don't want to be overeating, because the fuel can also leak out of our body fat as well. So this is now what we're going to talk about, from healthy to unhealthy. Why does fat, what I just told you, is so good for us? Why does it become dangerous? Well, it comes when we keep on overloading fuel, and we start putting poor quality food into our tanks, fuel into our tanks. So, you know, this is ultra-processed food, added sugars, too much alcohol, too much of anything, preservatives, artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, artificial sweeteners, all the stuff that you find all around us, okay? Once you start loading that poor quality fuel in your tank, not only does the tank blow up, but now you've got poor quality fuel, and so the fat cells get bigger and bigger. Now, look at what happens here. Small or normal fat cell becomes big fat cell, and when the fat cell becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, the area in the center of this mound of fat becomes starved of oxygen. It outgrows its blood supply. By the way, this is what happens with cancers as well. A tumor gets bigger and bigger, outgrows its blood supply, it needs to get more blood vessels in there. So fat out of control is like a cancer that grows. So this is really why it's so dangerous. Now, some things happen when the center of the fat mass becomes starved of oxygen. Well, it's oxygen starved and it becomes inflammatory. Inflammation sets out. It's like setting that mound of fat on fire. Now you've got that flammable mess that I talked about, the overflowing gas tank, right? Now, the other thing that actually happens is that when you have inflammation in fat, the inflammation leaks out, and what it does is it disrupts all those hormones that fat actually makes normally to help your metabolism function smoothly. Now your fat in your body can't remember now, am I hungry or not hungry? Should I be using sugar? Should you be using our fuel? Is it loading or unloading temp? I can't remember, should we burn or not, or store? I'm all confused, I'm all inflamed. This is what happens when we actually have inflammation in our body. And then when you have too much fuel stored into your fat tanks, actually, the fat will leak out of the fat cells, and it becomes a toxic dump. The fat leaks out, and it will actually get in your bloodstream, it'll go to your liver, and it'll poison your liver, kill your liver cells. Now, many of you will not know this, but there is a silent epidemic called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and it says exactly what happens here. Fat leaks out of your cells, your fat, poisons your liver, and your liver starts to get scarred and fails. It's the #1 reason to have liver transplant today. Okay, it is serious. It's outstripped alcoholism as a reason for liver transplant, and it's all because of its metabolism gone wrong. Fat that was good suddenly becomes bad. Okay, it's kind of like going from the Force to the dark side. If you're a Star Wars fan, this is actually something that why we need to put everything into context. All right, so if you don't want to actually overload and get into this problem, pretty simple. Don't overload your fuel tanks. And something practical, there is a Confucian saying translated to Japanese called harahachi banmi, and that means stop eating when you're 80% full. Stop eating when you're satisfied but not feeling full. Okay? Enjoy your meal, but don't stuff yourself. All right? And you know what this is not like when you think about Thanksgiving meal and you can't wait to take that second and you just take one more bite and you're like, oh man, I went from feeling pretty good to not feeling so great. So we've all been there, but don't eat until you are stuffed. Now, let's talk about some ways, the surprising ways that, so I told you fat's good until it's bad, and I showed you why fat can be bad, but did you know that some fat can be very deadly and other fat can be very helpful? We got the evil fat and the hero fat at its extremes. Let me show you what this is. All right, so fat comes in 2 colors. And if you've ever painted a room, you know you got to go to that Benjamin Moore section in the hardware store, and you got to look at all those different colors, and you pick out white or you pick out brown. So we've got white fat and brown fat are just the 2 colors. And you can actually see what they look like under the microscope. White fat is pretty transparent, whitish colored, and brown fat actually looks brown. By the way, you know why brown fat looks brown? It's got a lot of iron in it. Iron, like, is what nails are made out of. If you left a bunch of nails outside, what would they do? They'd rust. And so this is basically the iron oxidizing in brown fat. And I'm going to tell you in just a moment what brown fat does. But let's look at white fat first. White fat actually can be subcutaneous, meaning under the skin, so you can see it. That is the love handle. That is the muffin top. That is the stuff that you don't often want to see that can occur. And the reason you can see it is because it's under the skin. All right? And by the way, there's also something called visceral fat. Visceral fat is something you can't see. It's deep inside the belly, inside your body tube. So you could have a skinny body tube, but still pack it with a lot of extra fat. Dangerous, very, very dangerous, okay? Remember what I told you, when you have too much fat packed away, it doesn't matter what the size of your body tube is, all right? It becomes inflamed. It can start to leak. It can disrupt all the other hormones in your body. Very, very dangerous, all right? Now, let's take a look at this. We're going to talk about white fat and dangerous fat. You can be somebody who has that dad bod, you know, not cut, not fit, not super athletic. Not bad, all right, you'd say, but you could have lots of skinny fat packed in there. What's skinny fat? Skinny fat, by the way, is like peanuts that you would go to the FedEx and you're going to ship a long fluorescent light bulb. You ask across the country, you can ask for a skinny box. You're going to put the light bulb in there, you're going to dump a whole bunch of peanuts in there. But if you kept on stuffing up those peanuts into that box, a lot, put the whole bag of peanuts in there, it's going to be crushing that light bulb. You can still tape the box shut, and at arm's length, it's still a skinny box, but it is packed with fat. So we can do that, and that's really what skinny fat is, and it can happen in men, it can happen in women. So even if you think you are lean and just, have that dad bod or middle-aged bod, you know what, I'm not fat, I'm not, you might not be happy with your weight, but I'm not as bad as so-and-so, okay? Be warned, you could still have skinny fat. Now, why is this super dangerous? At the very beginning, Jim Byron talked about President Nixon's commitment to fight cancer. Well, it turns out skinny fat's connected with cancer. It's really amazing. So, this is a study from Weill Cornell Medical School, in which they looked at women and found that skinny fat in women is connected to breast cancer. So you don't have to be heavy. You can look thin, but have extra body fat, and it sets you up for breast cancer. Here's how the study was done. Almost 3,500 women with normal body mass index, BMI. They're not considered overweight, they're not considered obese. From 50 to 79, they followed them for 16 years. Women who might or might not have normal body fat, but then they measured who had body fat using the scan called DEXA. You can actually pick up the amount of visceral fat you have, skinny fat. And then they measured all these blood tests, and they followed them for 16 years and asked, wait a minute, who actually developed breast cancer? And it turns out that women who had skinny fat, so they were lean to begin with, they looked lean, but they actually had extra body fat, had twofold increase, twice the risk of developing invasive breast cancer compared to women who didn't. Very important. So don't think that you can get out of jail just because you're looking okay in the mirror. You want to actually control that excess body fat regardless of what your body size is. By the way, those women with excess body fat also had high insulin levels, high inflammation, not surprisingly, based on what I told you, and their fat hormones were all over the map. They were confused. Their hormones were dysregulated. They had a problem with their hormones, okay? Now, these are all the things I've been talking about as a problem with fat, and guess what? It all the way causes a domino effect that can set you up for cancer as well. That was study on breast cancer, very sobering to see, okay? And by the way, what I'm showing you, if you're sort of paying attention and saying, wow, I didn't really think about it before, but that's kind of a bummer. I can tell you this is the reason that you should fight extra body fat. Forget about the bathing suit, forget about your jean size. This is the inner health is the reason that we actually want to have better control over our body fat, even if you look like you're a thin person, and it'll give you better metabolism by doing it as well. Lower cancer risk, better metabolism. What's not to love about that? Now, by the way, it's not just breast cancer. There are a total of 10 more cancers, in addition to breast cancer, that increased body fat has been associated with for the same reason that I just told you. Inflammation, knocks out your hormones, sets you up to develop all these other types of cancer as well. So this is one of the reasons why, if we want to control the cancer epidemic that we have in this country, to fully get to where we want to go, we need to work on our metabolism as well. We need to work on our diet. We need to work on our lifestyle. All right, it's not just about inventing new chemo drugs. It's also about helping us become empowered to make better lifestyle decisions. Now, I just show you this, by the way, because this is one of those prescription weight loss drugs, Ozempic. You inject it in your body, and you know what happens? It works on your brain. It pushes a switch in your brain to make you not feel hungry. So you just don't want it, you lose interest in eating. What a bummer that is. For me, I like to eat, I like to cook, I look forward to my meals. All right, I try to eat healthy, obviously for what I do, but I don't want to have my brain messed with in a way that makes me lose interest in appetite. It's kind of like, I was joking over dinner, they were like, well, how do you think about these weight loss prescription drugs? I said, Viagra, right? Supposed to actually help you with a behavior that you would find pleasure in. Well, this is like anti-Viagra. It just blocks, you have no more desire to eat. What a bummer that is, because food is part of our humanity. Most of us look forward to eating, and if you go back to your family, your ancestors. We all had food traditions no matter where we came from. And so this is why I'm thinking that we should find better ways to actually control our body fat and control our weight simply than injecting ourselves, every single month with something, okay? So what's the way to do this? And I'm gonna end on a really positive note, which is that you can use your body fat to fight body fat. That brown fat can be harnessed by us with the foods that we choose to fight the white fat, the stuffing in our body. And so you can use fat to fight fat. And the crazy thing is that you can eat food in order to get your fat to do that. All right, so this is like a big surprise, right? It's not that you want to fight fat, don't eat food. No, I'm telling you to eat food to activate your fat and make your fat, one kind of fat, fight the other kind of fat. All right, so let's talk about that quickly. This is about the brown fat. Brown fat, I told you it's like a space heater. Well, it's also kind of like the gas range that you might have if you have a kitchen that has a gas range. What do? You turn it, click, 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 whoosh. That's what brown fat does. It generates heat. And by the way, white fat's lumpy bumpy, right? The muffin top, all right? Brown fat is not lumpy bumpy. It is wafer thin. It's about thin as paper. And it's not close to the surface of your skin. It's close to the bone. In fact, it's around your neck, under your breastbone, under our arms, like a girdle, a little bit in our belly. And it's designed, when we're really cold, to fire up to keep us warm. In fact, the first animals that we discovered brown fat in were hibernating animals, okay? And this basically, what happens is that in hibernating animals with brown fat, when they eat, they eat lots of food, which is fuel, they store it in there, fat, now you guys know how this works, and when they go to hibernate, it's cold outside, that's why they're hibernating, their brown fat fires up, okay? And guess what they do? That firing up, that flame burns down the fuel in their fat. So the brown fat burns down the white fat in hibernating animals. And in adult humans, this also can happen, all right? This is really a big discovery. It's called thermogenesis. Thermo, heat, genesis, a generation of heat. Your brown fat, which is paper thin, around your body, I'm going to show you where it I'm going to show you a picture of what it looks like on a person, actually fires up like your gas jets on your cooktop, and it burns. That fuel comes from your white fat. Good fat burns down bad fat. All right, now look at room temperature. You can't see the brown fat in this image. This is actually a special scan. Looking for brown fat. Brown fat would be dark, and I don't really see anything. But now put somebody in cold temperatures. Lower that thermostat so they've got goosebumps, right? It's cold. And look at that. Boom, brown fat lights up, okay? It's generating heat. And as it's generating heat, this brown fat's burning down the white fat. I told you cold temperatures can do this, and this has been studied now. So you might expect the pharmaceutical researchers have been trying to look at, can we find a drug that can do it? It turns out there's a bladder drug called mirabegron. You give it at ultra high doses. Please don't try this at home, all right? It's a bladder spasm drug. It will also turn on your brown fat. But the great news, and this is the area of research I worked on, if a drug can do this, and we figured out how the drug actually works, guess what? Foods can do it too. There's more than 150 foods that will ignite your brown fat, click, 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 whoosh, and cause your brown fat to burn down the extra fuel in your white fat, unpack the stuffing inside your tube of your body, lower that extra fat, allow your metabolism to rise. By the way, your waist circumference shrinks, belts get a little tighter, jeans fit a little bit better, can get in those jeans again. Look, that's the fringe benefit of doing this, and your cancer risk will actually go down as well. And overall, you'll be healthier, less inflammation in your body. So I read about 150 foods in my book, and you can eat them in order to be able to use your good fat to fight the bad fat. Eat foods to activate your fat to fight fat. That's a really cool concept, fat versus fat. All right, now, let me just show you a few of these foods. Navy beans, because you're gonna be surprised. Navy beans, these are the canned navy beans you get in that forbidden middle aisle at the grocery store. It contains dietary fiber and contains gallic acid that both turn on thermogenesis, turn on your brown fat to burn down white fat. So University of Toronto studied overweight subjects, 35 to 55. They gave them just 5 cups of canned beans ready to eat out of the the grocery store, and they ate everything else as normal. They did it for a month, 5 cups of beans every day for, it's 5 days of 7 days. They took their body measurements, and at 1 month, there was a 1-inch decrease in their waist size. That only can occur if that stuffing, that visceral fat, burns down. Decrease in harmful visceral fat by eating beans. Think about that. Cheap canned beans you can get in the grocery store. Now, obviously, how you cook the beans can make a big difference. You don't want to be adding all kinds of butter and all kinds of other things to it. But something simple and inexpensive can actually combat body fat. Strawberries will do it too. It's got ellagic acid, turns on brown fat, okay? 33 subjects studied by the University of Nevada in Oklahoma, 2.5 cups of strawberries or placebo every day for a month. And guess what? At a month, they had 40% decrease in their insulin because their body was metabolism was starting to rise. They were burning down fat. Inflammation is actually going down. Cholesterol goes down as well. And the ellagic acid causes your body to create even more brown fat. Even more of that space heater, brown fat that you actually want. 2.5 cups of strawberries a day. Pretty easy to do, all right? Here's another one, apple cider vinegar. I used to laugh when my friends told me, oh, I'm having apple cider vinegar to lose weight. I'm like, that's gotta be bunk. I've now eaten my words, literally, because it's true. It turns out the acetic acid in vinegar, so it doesn't have to be apple cider. It could be red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, peach vinegar, you name it. The acetic acid will actually do it. It actually slows down, it breaks down the fat, prevents fats from blowing up, prevents the balloon from blowing up of storing energy. And this has been studied in Japan. They recruited 155 people and gave them either 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in water, and they just drank half of it in the morning and half of it at night. That's just 2 tablespoons is the highest dose. And they measured everything else, their body weight, their waist circumference, their blood pressure, their blood test. At 4 weeks, the apple cider vinegar drinkers, started to lose weight. The high dose ones lost twice as much weight as the low dose ones, 4 pounds versus 2.7 pounds, and they lost either 3/4 of an inch or half an inch of their waistline. Their belt size got smaller because they were burning away. Their brown fat was burning away the white fat. And by the way, the people in the placebo group who didn't get apple cider vinegar, they gained weight. Their waist size got bigger the other direction. So they can measure visceral fat went away, subcutaneous fat went away, the blood triglycerides level, cholesterol started to fall, and the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar prevents the fat cells from expanding. Pretty amazing. Tomatoes, all right? This was studied in Portugal. 35 women, okay, young women. All they had is 1 ripe tomato a day before lunch to eat for 30 days, all right? And what's in a tomato? Something called lycopene. Lycopene starves cancer for cutting off the blood supply, protects you against ultraviolet damage to your skin from the sun. By the way, studies have shown if you have a tomato or 2 slices of watermelon, a tomato salad or 2 slices of watermelon before you go to the beach in the summertime, it'll just having that lycopene in your bloodstream will protect your DNA by 60% from sun damage. Very, very important. But now check this out. 1 ripe tomato in young people, young women, check it out. At a month, the subjects lost weight. Okay, no special exercise, no special diet, just 1 tomato. Weight loss started after 2 weeks. Their fat mass dropped. Cholesterol, triglycerides, all went down. And so how much do you need to have this equivalent? Well, if you don't want to eat a fresh tomato, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste will give you the exact amount of lycopene, or 3/4 cup of tomato sauce. Not a lot to ask. And this is what's amazing. We now know what's in the food that can activate the brown fat to fight the good fat, help the good fat fight bad fat, which then elevates your metabolism. So my book is really about, my research is all about how do we actually improve our metabolism while fighting harmful body fat, lowering our risk of disease, lowering inflammation, and giving us more energy all at the same time. And you don't have to go on a diet. You can eat foods that you actually enjoy, all right? And by the way, one last thing. I told you that extra body fat sparks cancer growth. Cancers are like fat cells, fat masses. They need blood vessels in order to grow. And many of the substances that I showed you in the foods that burn down harmful white fat also starve cancers by cutting off their blood supply. It's called anti-angiogenesis, and this is an area that I study as well. Imagine that. You can lower your risk of cancer, and if you have cancer, you can start to cut off the blood supply so that your whatever treatment you're having might actually work better as well, all while eating foods that you enjoy, all right? Now, one of the things I want to show you is that, by the way, if you want to actually get a whole list of foods that actually start your metabolism, you know, all you got to do, if you come to my website, it's a download. All you got to do is download it. You know how when a hotel now, all the room service menus are all on your TV screen? So I decided to copy that. Anybody who wants to do the QR code, you can download a free thing from my website. It's just a list of foods that actually spark your metabolism, spark brown fat. It's in my book, okay? But I just wanted to make it easy because how great is it to have it on your phone as well? You can take it shopping. So if you kind of are starting to think, well, okay, he just gave us another reason to eat salad. Let me just tell you, of the 150 foods, they're the ones that you find in a Mediterranean market. You know, that the Italians and the Greeks and the Spaniards make amazing, tasty dishes that you would go to a restaurant and order the dishes off the menu. Mediterranean style eating, okay? This is not about deprivation. Or in Asia, if you go to Malaysia, Singapore, China, Japan, the same ingredients that activate your brown fat, burn down harmful white fat, and elevate your metabolism are found in Asian markets as well. All right, now who doesn't like something on a Mediterranean or an Asian menu? Look, we can all get behind this. This is not hard to do, and it's not expensive. I showed you a can of beans could actually be helpful as well. So the mystery of actually how to actually improve our metabolism and how to eat to beat your diet is really all in, you know, it's all in our grocery stores. We don't have to strain to deprive ourselves of the foods that we like. And if you like seafood, for example, there's a whole chapter in my book about this amazing thing. We used to think you have to have salmon, you have to have mackerel, you have to have anchovies or sardines. Oh, those are fishy fish, I don't like them. Guess what? It turns out research studies have now shown that cod, which is not very oily, can actually work as well as salmon. Not quite as well as salmon, but it also works. And so much lower levels of omega-3 fatty acids will spark your brown fat to burn white fat. Oh, if cod will work, guess what? Shrimp will work, mussels work, clams will work, squid will work as well. Now you're back to the Mediterranean or Asia to order something off the seafood section of their menu. You see how this works? This is about the joy, rediscovering the joy of eating and taking us closer and back to the roots that we actually started from, where traditional patterns of healthy eating from the healthiest countries of the world, at least traditionally, actually can be helpful to us and elevate our metabolism. Coffee and tea also can burn down harmful white fat. Cup of coffee a day, up to 4 cups of coffee a day, actually will burn down will actually shrink your waistline. Tea, green tea, matcha tea. Matcha tea will actually help you burn fat. Even if you work out, you have 4 cups of matcha a day, it'll make you burn your fat, your workout burn fat 35% more. Okay, so really quite powerful. Again, these are the traditions that many cultures have been using for hundreds of years. So the final myth I'm going to bust for you tonight is that you have to lose a lot of weight in order to be able to benefit your health, right? I mean, that's the other thing. I got to lose a lot of weight to fit it in my dress or to look good. I got to get toned again. But for health, you know, your doctor probably will say, well, you know, you should really try to lose 25 pounds or so. Like I'm a doctor, okay? I can tell you, like, I used to say this all the time. I used to be a VA doctor and take care of the veterans. These guys, you know, that really fought for our country, a lot of them carry a lot of weight around. And so, you know, the doctors say, well, you know, you shouldn't eat this, you shouldn't do that, and you're carrying way too much weight. Try to lose 20 or 30 pounds. Yeah, try to lose 20 or 30 pounds. All right, so the idea you carry around, you got to lose a lot of weight to get benefit, but actually it turns out you don't have to lose a lot of weight to get a lot of benefit. And now I'm going to show you, look at this. This is studied in humans. You lose 1 to 4 pounds, you reduce your risk of heart failure by 6%. You lose 5 pounds, you lower your risk of breast cancer by 18%. 10 pounds, you up your reduced risk of breast cancer 25%, but now 39% reduction of uterine cancer, endometrial cancer. 11 pounds, 36% reduction in all-cause mortality for any disease, 19 pounds, 22% reduction in risk of dying of a complications of diabetes. You lose 20 pounds, you have a third of a reduction in a risk of breast cancer. So there's a sliding scale. The more you lose, the more risk you reduce, but even a little bit counts, all right? So don't get fixated on gigantic numbers, all right? And that's what people are aiming for a lot of times, these unrealistic diets. Lose 20 pounds in only 2 weeks. Don't go for that. Enjoy your life. Eat foods that you actually really like, and go for inner health really is what you want. So, I like this quote from Michelangelo, the guy who created the statue of David. He said, every block of stone is a statue inside it. It's a task of the sculptor to discover it. And that's really who we are. We are just this, we're a block of stone, and our metabolism really hides the statue that's inside us. So it's up to us to figure out how we want to live our lives, how we want to choose the foods. And what I'm telling you is time to rediscover the joy of eating with foods that we like in order to be able to regain our health. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to open up the floor to some questions. I see one right over here. If you have a question, just raise your hand, flag me down, I'll get to you.
Dr. Lee, I have 2 questions. Number 1, how do you know if you're skinny fat? And number 2, if you want to activate your brown fat, should we all go and do cryotherapy and freeze our butts off for a little bit?
All right, so let's talk about the cryotherapy for a second. It turns out that, there's a health fad, kind of like doing cold plunges in order to be able to actually lose weight. It does work, actually, for the reasons that you just heard about, but you don't have to do that. What I'm saying is that our brown fat responds to cold really quickly, but you might not enjoy a cold plunge every now and then, but you can actually eat foods that can achieve the same kind of thing without the same shock to the system. Now, you asked a question about how do you know if you have skinny fat. I would say if you're eating the typical American diet, even if you look lean, you probably have some skinny fat. Now, there are methods that are out there, like that DEXA scan, DXA, that you can actually find someplace that will do it for you. It's a scan that will actually measure your skin, your bones, your muscle, and your fat, and it'll find where the fat is in your body, and you can get a number, all right? What I think is exciting about health tech, they're now inventing ways to actually be able to capture the visceral fat much more quickly, much more easily, much more cheaply. So, I can imagine in the near future, we'll have something that, maybe it's kind of like a girdle something you can strap around yourself that will do the scan, and you'll read it out in your watch. By the way, there's another way you can actually tell if your metabolism is good. All right, it's a simple thing. I discovered it myself. It's a breathalyzer for your metabolism. So, so the cops pull you over for the road, you're at the night, and they want to see if you're fit to drive. Well, guess what? There's a breathalyzer. It's called Lumen, L-U-M-E-N. I discovered it. 2 women from Israel who are ultra-marathoners, triathletes, okay? They invented this thing that you breathe into. It's L-U-M-E-N. You breathe into, and it'll actually measure your metabolism based on the same kind of idea that your breath will reflect what it is. So you train it, and then it'll measure your metabolism, tell you if you're fat burning, okay? If you're burning that fat, so that's why I do it in the morning. And for that number, it'll actually, as you're blowing out in it, there's a little meter on your phone that'll actually show you whether you're doing it the right way for the right amount of time, and it'll give you a number on your phone, which is pretty cool. So again, I don't make money from Lumen. I'm just telling you that this is where we're going with this kind of information. It's sort of like, instead of inventing gizmos and then finding an application, now we're beginning to understand our body well enough to be able to actually figure out what we need to invent to be able to test ourselves.
Next question over here.
Hi. So about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple autoimmune issues, from Hashimoto's to psoriatic arthritis, and I have a reoccurring iritis. So I was put on a immunosuppressant, but had a terrible reaction. So I decided to go the route of functional medicine. So I do a 18-6 intermittent fasting, turmeric and omegas, and increase the level of vitamin Ds. And I take ibuprofen maybe once a month now. That it changed that for me. And I just wanted you to speak a little bit about autophagy, if you could, and just get your opinion on that.
Okay, so let me try to summarize what you said. Fasting is something that is becoming very popular in the press, and people that are into fitness and health or trying to combat inflammatory diseases will start to do something called intermittent fasting. And then you mentioned something called autophagy. Auto is self, phagy is eat. And so basically autophagy is a process of actually your good cells, your good immune cells, chomping down and getting rid of your bad cells, all right? I'm gonna put it all together for you quickly. All right, so first of all, intermittent fasting is what we do every single night. When you go to bed, you're not eating, you're fasting, and remember I told you, your metabolism, when you're not eating, will switch gears into fat-burning mode. So when you're sleeping, your body's burning fat, fuel, out of the fat that you gained, that you had from the food you ate all day, or maybe the night before, or maybe the week before, or maybe the holidays, all right? It can take a long time to burn off extra fat if you load up too much. Now, the thing that's amazing is the simplest way to let your body do the heavy lifting for you to get started. Before you go out and buy strawberries or apple cider vinegar, I'm going to tell you what I do, all right? I try to get 8 hours of sleep, all right? I can't tell you every night that I reliably go to bed at 11 and wake up at 7 in the morning, but that's an ideal, 8 hours, all right? 8 hours, you're taking the toxins out of your brain, you're recharging your gut microbiome, your immune system's rebuilding itself. Sleep is really, really important, okay? And during that sleeping time, my body's burning fat because metabolism switched gears. So here's what I do, and this is something that is a little kind of pro tip, I'm telling you. The night before, when you eat dinner, let's say you eat dinner at 7, let's say you finish dinner at 8, you put your dishes away, all right? Don't eat again until the next day. Now, how many of you actually go, I'll put the dishes away, but then you'll sit down with a bowl of something, or you might nosh on something, or having a midnight snack, bedtime snack. Very common, okay? It's kind of a common habit. But remember, every time you put food in your mouth, your metabolism's got to switch back to fuel storing mode, back into your fat, all right? So what I do, when I'm done eating dinner, the night before, put my dishes away, I don't eat anything else. No midnight snacking. So let's say I eat dinner at 7, I finish dinner at 8, put my dishes away, I don't eat anything until I go to bed at 11. I've just gained 3 extra hours of fat burning when my metabolism is doing the work. Okay, 3 plus 8, do the math, that's 11 hours. I get up in the morning, let's say I get up at 7, all right? And I don't do what my mom taught me to do. My mom said, hurry up and eat breakfast so you can get on the school bus and don't be late for school, right? That's how we're all conditioned, all right? We're adults. We don't need to do that anymore. So I get up in the morning, I take my time getting ready, take my time getting dressed. I might check my emails, I might go for a walk, I might read a book. Okay, I wait for about an hour before I have the first thing in the morning, sometimes longer. Now, do the math. 3 hours the night before, 8 hours, plus 1 extra hour, that's 12 hours of fat burning, metabolism activating, all right? I've spent 12 hours, half of the day, with my metabolism doing what I want it to do, which is to burn down fat so we can elevate itself. I tell you, I feel much better every day, and anyone can actually do it. That doesn't require drugs, doesn't require a coach, doesn't require anything fancy. You can do that. That would be my first tip to you guys on how to get started on this and using the information I shared with you tonight.
All right, we have one last question over here.
Oh, I better make it good. Well, thank you, Dr. Lee. That was magnificent. Welcome to Yorba Linda. We're proud to have you here, and your discussion was fantastic. Like a lot of people, I had a health scare a couple years ago, and through my reading and research, I transitioned to a plant-based diet and lost a considerable amount of weight, about 40 pounds. And a lot of what you talk about is what a plant-based lifestyle will advocate for, but you say it's okay to eat cod and to salmon. And tell me, because I've had good success, is it okay to eat meat? And if so, what would you recommend?
Okay, so what I heard you just say is that by transitioning to a plant-based diet, you actually had a lot of the benefits that included the things that I talked about. But what about the people that want to eat some meat? All right, now I'm not a vegan, and I know that like sometimes when I give talks out to a mostly vegan audience, they're like, What, traitor, you actually are not a vegan? Listen, veganism is an ethical decision. It comes from a good place in the heart where you don't want to hurt animals. And I can get behind that. But I'm somebody who enjoys food, and so I pretty much eat anything. But I will tell you that I eat very little red meat. Okay, occasionally I'll have some red meat, but not so often. I'll have more seafood, for example. I'll have some chicken occasionally. I treat meat, by the way, as a condiment. I don't make it the centerpiece. When I plan a meal, I try to think about what fresh seasonal veggies I want to put in there. I find super tasty ways to cook it. By the way, if anybody is concerned, like, I don't know how to cook bok choy, or I don't know how to cook escarole, go to Google recipe and hit video and have somebody show you exactly how to make it. All right, it's super easy. These days, there's no excuse not to be able to do any of this. Now, what about meat? Okay, some of you may have heard that there's these plant-based meats. All right, Impossible Burger, Beyond Meats. Don't go for it. Okay, and the reason is this. I told you at the very beginning, ultra-processed foods are not good for your metabolism. They actually help you gain weight. Well, there is nothing more ultra-processed, and in fact GMO'd, than these plant-based meats. They don't look like plants. They don't taste like plants. They're not green. They're not colorful. They're actually highly manufactured. In fact, one of them, I can't remember which one, is genetically engineered to, quote, bleed when you actually cook it, to make it look like a burger. You know, that juicy under slightly medium burger? Okay, so I'm just telling you, like, look, if you're vegan and you want to feel like you can actually sample a burger, go for your Beyond or Impossible thing. You'll get the taste of meat. It tastes like I've had them before. They taste pretty much like meat. Not perfect, but it is ultra processed. So what I always tell my patients is this, or people that I talk to, look, I'm not afraid of meat. I just think you should cut down to make it like a treat and don't eat too much of it. I think we live in a prosperous nation. When the agriculture and everything started to take off, and we became a land of abundance when it comes to food. You go to a restaurant, you get the big, thick steak. There's values associated with success. I'm going to have my big steak tonight. I'm going to celebrate with a gigantic steak. You know, we're beginning to change our minds about whether or not that's such a good thing. In fact, we know it's not such a good thing. Keep meat as a condiment, okay? Have a little bit if you want. Cut down or cut out. But if you must eat meat, what I would tell you is this. Get the best ribeye you can and knock it out of the park. Cook it and savor it, okay? And spend most of your time eating other healthier things, all right? That's what I would suggest.
All right, let's get a round of applause for Dr. Lee. You can purchase your books up in the front lobby. He will personalize and sign each book, and we'll see you up there. Have a great night. Drive safe.